Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to the third. We're on the third episode of our new cast. An Englishman, an Irishman, and a load of bollocks. I don't think we'll grow tired of saying that, will we, Dave? Well, the last
No,
bit anyway.
got a bit of a ring to it, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, there is plenty of bollockses around. But anyway, so tonight I have the great pleasure, really, we're still doing our Meet the Hosts episodes, aren't we? If you want to call it episodes, as you say, the last one, whatever we're doing here. So I have the great pleasure to talk to Dave tonight. It's a wet and windy night where I am. So I'm just going to have a chat with Dave for the next 30 minutes, 35 to 40 minutes. So how are you, Dave? How was your weekend?
All right, Paul. Yeah. Your weekend was okay. I mean, I never know what day of the week it is now. I think it's Monday, is it? Monday evening. Yeah. The weekend was it was good. It was good. It's just again, it's just observing the world and being awestruck every day, really, by the continuing insanity of everything. Really, it's it never fails to it never fails to amaze me. But yeah, I enjoyed my weekend though. Yeah, I enjoyed my weekend. If you did too.
It's never ending, the insanity and craziness, isn't it? I went to a football match at the weekend. It was brought the family up to Dublin to the Viva Stadium. I hate calling it the Viva Stadium. It's Lansdowne Road. The old Lansdowne Road used to be a great stadium. But anyway, it was the FAI Cup final, equivalent to the FA Cup final in England. So Derry City were playing Shelburne. It was great for the kids seeing the Viva Stadium, and their reaction was brilliant being the stadium. But Derry won 4-0. A lot of people would probably know who the Shelburne manager is. His name is Damien Duff. Duffer. Do you remember Damien Duff?
Ex-Blackburn.
Yeah. Ex-Chelsea.
Chelsea. Did he play for Newcastle as
well?
Or,
possibly, yeah. And I think it was the 2002 World Cup. He was probably unplayable in that World Cup. He was absolutely brilliant. But he was funny. He was always struck me as kind of a shy individual, but it was funny looking at him yesterday. He was really animated on the sideline. Really, all these theatrics, arms swinging everywhere. But back to the insanity. I was looking over the Derry City supporters, and I mean, football supporters, they really are clueless, aren't they? No disrespect to football supporters, because I like football. Waving Palestinian flags, waving the Antifa. I saw the Antifa flag, the red, black and white flag, and it's so insufferable.
It's a poisonous mix, actually. For me, politics should never have any place in football. And I know that we're going to be doing one of our upcoming podcasts. We're going to be talking about the upcoming World Cup, aren't we? So we'll probably veer into the whole political atmosphere pervading that World Cup. But yeah, for me, football, it's football and music go together, football and culture go together, football and history go together, football and storytelling goes together. But football and politics, well, as you know, politics has seeped into, or should I say, extreme unhinged politics seems to have seeped into everything, doesn't it? Obviously, as you saw at the
then match. You could look at the other angle, Dave, is that you look at Celtic and Rangers. So that's what makes it probably the best rivalry in the world. The old firm. Is politics and religion mixed in, but then it can get too toxic. But look, I was only thinking, before I kind of chat to you about your book and other various things, I was thinking about, maybe our listeners will be curious, or maybe they won't care, or maybe there's no one listening. Maybe it's just an echo chamber here between us. They might be curious, Dave, of how we actually met, because it was about 2 years ago.
Do you know what?
Via the Telegram channel.
I actually can't pin it down. I'll be honest with you, Paul. What I do know is that in those, I think it was about 2 years ago, and since we did meet on some random Telegram chat. I mean, I used to be in the early days of the COVID insanity. I joined, like a lot of people. I was in dozens and dozens and dozens of Telegram.
It's the light paper Telegram channel.
Was that the one that? That was the one that we were in. Okay, yeah.
And do you know what it was, actually? Because I was only thinking today, because this is going to be a question, was you shared a video, and I think it epitomizes you, and you haven't veered off what you said in that video. You shared a video which was, and I commented on it, and I think you commented back, and that's how our friendship kind of grew, and we got to know each other. I remember I commented on the video, and what I remember from the video, I remember seeing was a kind of a straight talking, articulate, patriotic Englishman walking through the beautiful English countryside and speaking his truths, no bullshit, no pretense, speaking common sense in a world at that time, which was 2 years ago, in a world that was really lacking in common sense, and speaking your truths, and in a world that was the truth was diluted. And I think, and that was refreshing, and I think that's kind of how we got to know each other. And then we kind of were virtually, you know, we've been talking online and on the WhatsApp, but then we subsequently then, did we meet then in Blackpool a few months ago?
Yeah, the infamous Saturday in Blackpool, yeah.
Yeah.
It
was
the
good
beer
crack.
Flowed that day, didn't it? Yeah, the beer flowed. It was a great day, yeah. It was a great day.
It was. The Las Vegas of the north of England.
That's the one, yeah. I remember dancing to the Stone Roses. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon in some dingy bar somewhere. Yeah.
I remember that as well, and it was very apt that it was 3 in the day, and we walk into a bar, the two of us. It was like, you know, literally an Irishman and an Englishman walk into a bar. And I don't know if you remember, because you obviously do, the Stone Roses. It was, I wanna be adored. And walked in, and the whole bar was arms out, singing and rocking the Stone Roses. You know, and Ian Brown has been a legend in the last 2 years, so it was apt, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And I remember that day, actually, we were talking. I remember telling you the story when we got settled in for a couple of pints, for a few pints.
Yeah.
We got settled in. I remember telling you the story that I had my confidence restored on the train journey on the way down to Blackpool with Sarah, because it was a Saturday, about late morning, 11:30, something like that.
I remember that. Yeah.
The train was packed, and there was this group of girls who were on the lash, you know, they were going on a hen do and to Blackpool, and they were having a good few drinks on the train. And I thought, well, whether you like this or not, this is actually the England that I know. And so, you know, sometimes it can be annoying, but this is my country, what I'm seeing here. You know, the girls on the train having a good few drinks, enjoying themselves, wasn't a mask in sight. There was no fear. 100%. They were just going to Blackpool to go and get pissed and have a good afternoon. And I thought that, to me, is sanity returning to my country.
100%.
You know what I mean? I remember telling you that story. Because when you consider where we were,
when you just got off the train,
when you consider where we were, Paul, you know, we're still a lot. But when you consider that, you talked before about the, you know, I try and be straight talking and talk common sense, and but in a way, I actually did get lulled into the insanity and the psychosis, literally for a matter of days at the start. But I actually see that now as a bit of a gift, because I remember when the build up to the whole COVID and lockdowns was starting. I remember being very skeptical, you know, because the mainstream media, it fitted the usual pattern of, you know, take a subject, inject it with loads of fear, propaganda. It's not going to materialize into anything. And I thought, this is a load of bollocks. They're exaggerating. I maybe didn't realize how sinister it was at the time. But then I saw how many people around me were becoming very, very, very worried. And ultimately, because I had so much social proof, I second guessed myself, and I got lulled into it.
Of course.
But I don't think I ever got fully lulled into it, because a matter of a few days later, a couple of weeks later, I was very, very, very vocal in trying to raise awareness in how much of a lie that we were being told. But when it was then that I could see the unhinged, paranoid reaction to this virus or alleged virus. I could see the sudden deterioration or acceleration in deterioration of a society that had been slowly deteriorating for a number of years and decades. And I could see logic just went bang. Over the course of a few weeks, logic just disappeared from the world. It disappeared before my very eyes. And I saw people's behaviour as nothing short of immoral on an individual and societal basis, and they couldn't see it. So the gift for me lay in that, looking back, I could go, right, okay, I actually got affected by that propaganda myself, not fully, and only for a very, very short period of time, which kind of gave me a little bit of an insight. Actually, it gave me a bit of an idea into what brainwashing and indoctrination and how insidious it can be.
And this kind of leads me into kind of the first question, Dave, which is, you probably had the groundwork really to be prepared. You had the tools in many ways to be ready for the onslaught of February, March 2020. Albeit you said it took you a few days, but a few days, it hasn't even. Some people are still in that.
Oh yeah,
craziness of taking on board everything. But an important date, would you agree, a significant date in your life is the 25th of April 2019. Is that correct? Where did you walk out on your job? You left your job, and am I correct in saying the next day, 6 a.m, you started to write a book, which I have in front of me.
Cheers,
strongly
Paul.
recommend it. Very good, brilliantly well written. Nice early Christmas present for anyone out there. It's a good synopsis as well of the craziness of the past 2 years, 3 years, why we are where we are, you know. So just tell me a little bit about 25th of April 2019, a significant date in your life.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah. First of all, thanks for the the feedback, positive feedback there about my book. And I am just going to do a shameless plug here. There's the book there, the Imperfect Individual. No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. We'll put a link to the description for anyone who's interested in this book. So, and I'll talk about the book I'll talk about the book now. But you mentioned that date, the 25th of April, 2019, and it was a significant date because. Yeah, I'd worked in an office environment for, I think it was 13 years. And in that, at university, I'd noticed first of all, it was never really the job for me. I wasn't ever designed to be sat in an office in front of a laptop, really. Now, that's not to say there were periods of the job at certain times that I didn't enjoy, because I did, and I learned a lot. But I noticed the political atmosphere in the university deteriorating, the propaganda with regards to particularly what the student union were doing in the academic side of things, and how that was insidiously getting worse. I felt more and more claustrophobic. The job became more and more bureaucratic. It became more and more like these different doctrines that we had to follow. So there were a number of factors going on with the job, and also in my life at the time. I've always been interested in society, in my place within society. I've always been interested. I've always known that sitting in an office in front of a computer doing a job you don't really like is not normal. It's become normal for a lot of people, but it's not normal. And I've always
a huge theme in your book is individualism, isn't it?
It is. I've always felt deep down as well that I was going to write a book. I've always, it's one thing in my life. I've always known I'm gonna write a book. It just had to be the right time and place, and I had to have the right impetus and the right reason to be able to do it. So that was going up with my job. I had this yearning to try and fulfill some level of potential, and I was watching a world that was disintegrating and deteriorating as far as I could see. I think the tipping point for me with that job was I had to do something called, you'll know about this, unconscious bias training, where you find out how much of a racist, sexist bigot you are, you know what I mean? So I took one of these online tests, and I think you have to get insufferable. I think I'm sure you have to 80% to pass it. So they're happy with you being 20% of you, being a bit racist, but sexist. And I remember doing that test thinking, you know what they want you to answer, don't you? You know what they want you to say. But I thought, I'm not going to, I don't want 100% on this test. So I purposely tried to get a couple of wrong. But I just thought, no, I am not putting up with this utter lunacy, bullshit, and absolute sinister, what I would term communist re-education that they are asking.
Typical universities,
So that was the tipping point, and I used to do things in that job like I'd go to the toilet every 10 minutes because I was bored. Things like I was just bored. So I'd just make any excuse to go and get a bacon butty. I'd go for a walk outside. I'd go to the toilet. As I say, I just couldn't sit still. I knew that, and it just all culminated one day, and I walked out, and I never went back. And I woke up the next day, 25th of April, 2019. I remember it was a sunny day, clear blue skies. I think it was quite chilly, quite bracing day. And I woke up very unusually for me at 6 in the morning. You know, I don't wake up early. I like a lion. Anyway, got up.
You wouldn't be a farmer anyway.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, went for a walk down the canal.
Okay.
And I came back and I just typed the words, opened the laptop and I typed the words, meaning is all, because that was going to be the title of this book, The Imperfect Individual. I was going to call it Meaning is All.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't matter because the main theme I explore in that book is meaning, but they were the first three words of this book that I eventually brought to fruition. So it was almost like that break from that decision to leave that office 9 to 5, bureaucratic, boring world behind. That then kind of all roads led me at that moment in time to start writing that book. I just
was it a compulsion, Dave? Was it?
Yeah,
there was a compulsion to write it.
A compulsion. There was a calling. There was a need. Yeah. There was I got the feeling. It's similar to my YouTube channel. The overarching feeling was that it was, if I don't write this book and publish it on what I know needs to be said, I'll never forgive myself, because for all my faults and for all the things that I've not done and for all the failures that I've had, and for all the things that I might think I'm good at and I'm not, and all the things I might think I'm bad at, but possibly or not, I know for sure one thing I've always been good at is writing and communicating a message. So that combined with what, obviously, just my take on what was going on, I saw things very, very clearly, and I knew I could convey a clear message in this book with regard to the problems that the world was facing, and crucially why. Explain that and try to offer a positive solution as well. Now, this was, bear in mind, before the COVID scandemic came along as well.
And I think it's significant, and you mentioned it in the book a few times, and I said it is brilliantly written, and it's, my mother read it as well, and she just said it's so clear and concise, and even the layout of it is just there's perfectly knitted subsections as well, and everything kind of blends together perfectly. But a significant event that you mentioned in the book a few times that you knew society in the UK was broken was Brexit. Now, I'm not talking the ins and outs of Brexit, but was when a very significant high section of the population tried to revoke Article 50 through a petition. Yeah. Am I correct in saying 6 million people signed that petition? Yeah. I mean, that was the end of democracy in the UK as we know it. Would you agree? And I know that was an event that was deeply disturbing to you. So would you like to tell me what I know you mentioned the book, your feelings around that, and you must have been just shocked. They are the true fascists.
Absolutely, yeah. So the figure 6,103,056 will always stick in my mind, because that is the number of, anti-democratic zealots that are in the United Kingdom. I would probably say there's probably more now actually than there were in 2016. So Brexit, why was that important to me? Because Brexit itself wasn't particularly important. I remember at the time I voted to leave, but I was kind of torn. And the more I looked at it, I thought, nah. And the more I took into account, the history of the UK, the flexibility of the UK economy, as I saw things back then, not as I see things now, I thought the UK will be fine leaving the European Union. I can see the reasons for staying and see the reasons for leaving. I voted leave. Yeah. Now, genuinely, it was calculated. Yeah, genuinely, if the UK would have voted to remain, I would have looked at it the next morning and gone, we move on with our lives. I can honestly say that. Now, people talk about waking up to the real ways of this world and the real evils in this world. And as we know, when you do wake up, God, that is an upsetting, and there's so much emotional upheaval you go through when you see. But when you see maybe controlling influences and how they play out, individuals, organisations, whatever. But what maybe doesn't get talked about enough, and what woke me up in a different way, was to wake up. I woke up to how sick, immature, and morally bereft large sections of UK public life had become as a result of not what happened during Brexit, because the run-up to any important referendum like that, a referendum is always very start, yes or no. is always there's going to be a lot of animosity. There's going to be a lot of mudslinging.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's par for the course.
It's part of the course. I don't have a problem with that. What woke me up to, as I say, to the deterioration in public attitudes and a lot of people's views on democracy itself was what happened after, with regard to the democratic sabotage, not only of every mainstream UK political party, the European Union itself, most big businesses and organisations, the allegedly independent Speaker of the House of Commons, and most of the mainstream media, certainly including the BBC, wasn't there attempted democratic sabotage, although that was sickening in itself. It was the fact that there was so much public support for either a second referendum or just to cancel it altogether. And to me, that said, this country that I love is in serious shape, is in serious trouble.
Well, I have your book in front of me and I've highlighted a few bits, and exactly what you said. You said that this is in your own book. This was the moment that I started to realize the depths to which my own country had sunk.
Yeah.
And I would say that in Ireland, just from a personal point of view, that the time when I knew Ireland had sunk, that the soul of my country was destroyed, and I think I talked about it before too, was Dublin Castle 2018, when the vote came in that that abortion was legalized in Ireland. And the reaction of the crowd was similar to as if Ireland won a penalty shootout of the World Cup. There was screeching, there was howling, it was cheering. I wouldn't be surprised if I saw a beach ball in the crowd, ole 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 singing. It was, I felt it. I just, without being sentimental, I really felt it in my heart that there's something wrong here. This is deeply, deeply disturbing. We are fecked. I really thought that, you know, and I'm sure you felt the same. And I felt uncomfortable knowing that in my land, and similar to you in your land, that there's people in my communities, there's people in my country that think this. You know, it was a very uncomfortable feeling, I'm sure. You know, my innocence was broken in ways of my views on my beloved country.
Yeah, I remember, Paul, when you sent me that clip of what you're talking about there, the celebrations, because that's what they were after the abortion referendum, and it was one of those things where I struggled to find. That was even more shocking than what I'm talking about here. There's certain instances and situations where you struggle to find. I don't know whether I've got the vocabulary. Words like disturbing and sinister and actual evil comes to mind.
It was evil.
It still doesn't adequately describe, because you're right. There are people amongst us in our societies in the West now, and they are numerous, who care nothing for life. They care nothing for democracy. And I know that we certainly don't have any democracy in the UK now, with what's got 2 political coups in the last few weeks in the UK.
It's this nihilistic behaviour, isn't it?
They care nothing for freedom. They care nothing for human rights. They care nothing for truth. They have no respect for the dead. All they care about is their attachment to a narrative. And I think, I don't know whether you know Matthias Desmet. You've probably heard of him.
The mass formation,
mass formation, and he's basically come up with that theory himself, hasn't he? Building on the work of other people like Hannah Arendt and Joseph Mailer and people like that. How mass formation, how a society gets itself into such a possibly a nihilistic state, like you said there, or a state of where all that matters to them are what they are personally attached to, and it doesn't matter whether that's true or not. It doesn't matter whether it's moral or not. It doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. All that matters is that that's their doctrine. That's their holy text, because these things do have religious connotations. You know, they tend to be godless, soulless people, but they are following a doctrine in quite a rabid, almost fanatical religious way. So it's almost like the religious instinct is in them, but it's coming out in these it's manifested in these dark and dangerous and deplorable ways. And people might listen to this and think, God, he's he's off for one here. He's lost the plot. But I honestly don't think enough people realise that the problem that we're facing, Paul, too much attention is on the likes of the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the mainstream media, the World Health Organization, all the usual suspects, and that's all true, absolutely. But my angle is that our real problem, our enemy, if you want to call it that, because at the end of the day, if people are engaging in democratic sabotage, if people are doing absolutely nothing to defend basic human rights, if people are doing nothing in the quest for justice for people who've died at the hands of the state and these kind of things, they are the enemy as far as I'm concerned.
100%. I think that's why your book and your channel is very good and very relatable. Is that you don't delve too much into geopolitics, even though you do, but you don't delve into the World EF you mentioned, or WEF, the World Economic Forum, and you kind of always go back to the responsibility of the individual, don't you? And I was thinking, regarding back to the book, which throughout the podcast, we are going to refer back to your book, because either you like it or not, and it sounds really pretentious. You're a published writer now, Dave, so you're going to have to... Actually, I was going to ask you, when is the book launch going to be? I'm expecting nice, fine prawn sandwiches and someone playing a violin in the background for your book launch.
I love a prawn sandwich, me, actually, yeah.
Look at you. But back to the book, I was thinking about who is your book aimed towards, because obviously it's aimed towards everyone, but as I was reading it, and as the world is so transient at the moment, I was thinking that this book is perfect for people, and you might agree or disagree, and this is just throwing in my 2 pence, it's for people who are slowly waking up from their slumber. And this is a nice, gentle introduction that, again, you're not going into the heavy stuff of the Klaus Schwab, WEF, the Great Reset. That's great. That would just be too much for people. I think it's a good introduction, as I said, for people who are just slowly waking up to there's something a bit off at the moment. There's something that's just making sense. I don't know what you think of that, or...
Yeah, I think it's actually interesting to get your take on that, having read the book, actually, who it might appeal to most, because one thing I'm not is a marketer. I can write, hopefully, I can write.
No, you
but I don't know how to market. I'm not very... And I don't really like the concept of marketing. So when it came to who's my target audience, I never really had one. I just kind of wrote the book because it needed to be written. But now having written the book, having read it back, and now time's moved on a little bit, and things are taking shape. I think what you say there, yeah, I do. I mean, someone who's going to read, what I talk about. Where are we? Where it's all about the sanitization of life and the world of zombies clapping for the NHS and all the rest of it. Yeah. Someone who's still completely, in that psychosis is just going to pick that up and put it straight back down again. Yeah. So I think maybe you might be right. Hopefully you will. I just want it to be able to help anybody, to provide some level. It doesn't have the answers, but I just think it might provide some clarity, really, on, because what I see is that a lot of people are very, very confused. It's a confusing world to them. They don't understand why there's so much turmoil, why there's so many things that don't make sense, why there's so much contradiction, why there's so much mixed messaging. And that's not even taking into account they're now starting to process people, and they are, that what's happened in the last couple of years was insane, was completely evil. So those people, I hope, maybe might be the target audience. I mean, if anyone is watching this and is interested in the book, I'll put the link in the description to this podcast.
Just on a practical level, because obviously it's kind of like on a wish list for a lot of people to write a book. And it's one thing writing a book and thinking about writing a book, but it's another thing actually putting it into action and doing it. So, I'm not blowing smoke up your arse here, but, fair play. I'm sure it was cathartic in many ways, but it's probably a hard slog writing it. And I know you had issues with the publisher, etc. But if there is someone out there wanting to write a book, thinking about writing a book, what kind of practical tips would you give them? And what are the pros and cons of writing a book as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I probably need to have a good think on that. But I'll try and answer the question. The first thing I would say is, for me, this wasn't a book that I wanted to write. It's a book that I needed to write. So for that reason, there were elements of it that were cathartic, and I certainly derived a large degree of satisfaction when it was published and it was in my hand. You know, there I've got it in my hand there, so that's an achievement. But it was a hard slog. The material I was dealing with, the emotions that I was having to process, as I was writing the book. I don't know why it is that I've got this particular insight, and I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying it's my insight, and I feel things strongly. But whatever it is I feel, whether people agree with it or not, I think that I can communicate it, and because I think that I'm communicating some real truths, or maybe I often say, I think a lot about three things: truth, the truth, and lies. And they're three different things. And first of all, a lie is that's the easiest thing to process because it's clear and obvious and blatant to lie. You know, you'll see that when with presented in forms of in the form of inconsistencies, contradictions, and things like that. You can identify a lie. So, and for that reason, I kind of argue in the book that maybe the world needs to coalesce or could coalesce around the fact of being lied to. We don't need to agree on the truth now, because the truth for me, does it even exist? The truth is very nebulous. The truth is something that who has the right to say what the truth is? Truth, though, is very different from the truth, because for me, truth is about, well, how do you show up in your own life? How do you interact with your world? What's your connection and your connection to your own intellectual, spiritual, emotional essence? How do you relate to your own history? How do you perceive your own country? These are things that the truth is. And so it was my truth that I had to write that book. That was how my truth manifested itself. But the book isn't the truth. It's my truth. But it possibly, well, I think it does expose the worst lie that's ever been told, 100%. Ever, and the worst crime that's ever been committed. But it crucially, it explains how it's happened. And it comes from the angle of not of how they, you know, the puppet masters who are real, how they did it, but how we, the masses, allowed them to do it. And then now that we're in this absolute pickle and totalitarianism has washed up on the shores of our countries, how do we push the tide back? How do we swing the pendulum back? And we can maybe talk a little bit about that in the next.
Yeah, and I know we have a few minutes left, and it kind of, you talked about the truth and about where we are now as a society, and I know you talked yesterday in your video about the pandemic amnesty. I mean, in my opinion, they can run, but they can't hide. And that kind of leaves me thinking about, I don't know what you think, you kind of mentioned it yesterday about Matt Hancock being on I'm a Celebrity. I mean, that is it's so odd, and it's very off-putting, isn't it? And I was kind of thinking, I want to get your thoughts on kind of Matt Hancock and I'm a Celebrity. I was kind of thinking about this today, and I was thinking, is it a way that they want to humanize him? They want to make him, put him in a show where he's vulnerable, where people may feel sorry for him, and they remember that. They remember him on I'm a Celebrity, and they'll remember him doing a stupid Bush Tucker trial or all that shite, and they might forget what he actually did when he was the health secretary. You know, I think it's so disturbing. You know that. You know, and as you say, a large section of the population do watch these shows.
Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree with that. There's a couple of things that say, on behalf of the propagandists, they are capable of pulling off the most ridiculous but effective propaganda, because they do it time and time and time again. And they astound me. The Matt Hancock appearance on I'm a Celebrity get me out of here. Even I thought, I'm surely now they must be joking here. And I was like, no, they're not. It's actually there. And the other angle to it is there is a subsection of the population who it does not matter what's on their TV. It literally doesn't matter. I use the analogy, if the BBC, if the BBC newsreader came out and said, look in your front garden, that grass, it's not green, it's blue. These people would actually see blue grass. Or another one, they'd say, you could have an elephant standing under a bridge, right? They say that's an elephant standing under a bridge. They go, no, that's a giraffe standing under that bridge. And even though there's an elephant standing under the bridge, these people would actually see a giraffe standing under the bridge because the TV.
I know.
So there's a lot of things, a lot of different, there's a lot of different behavioural nudges going on with Matt Hancock's appearance. And again, we can talk a little bit more about that.
To be fair to some of the people on the show, I think they were a bit wondering why the hell is he here, and they talked about the effects of lockdowns, etc. I was thinking from an Irish context, I know we have a few minutes left, was if there was an Irish I'm a Celebrity and our health secretaries, our health ministers came on it, which was, we had Simon Harris, my God, Simon Harris anyway, and Stephen Donnelly. I actually think that the celebrities on the show, hypothetically, would say to those health ministers, oh, thank you so much for all the work you've done. I really do think that. There is that mentality in this country, where they probably think they've got away with it. But I often think about justice, that hopefully justice will be served. But in my eyes, that these people, they can't hide, because there's always people like you and me, Dave, out there. Like I was in Dublin yesterday, and I was thinking to myself, it's a small city. I could easily walk by politicians, big players that were part of the COVID scam. if I ever meet these people, I'm happily would walk up to these people and tell them what I think of them. They'll remember that. They'll remember people like us. They won't remember the people telling them how wonderful they are. It's the one person that'll come up to them and say something to them that'll really get to them, So they can run, but they can't hide, You
can't hide. No, that's right. I think you're, what you said there about, again, what they are try and say with this, the Matt Hancock appearance on I'm a Celebrity, it feeds into this idea of a pandemic amnesty where, where we forgive and forget. We forgive and forget to such an extent that the health secretary, who's responsible for one of the darkest things that went on in care homes, by the way, can be turned into a bit of a fun figure. We've got less than 1 minute left, Paul. Do you want me to wind it up and say we'll do part 2 tomorrow? Is that okay?
Part 2, and then we're going to do part 2, and we'll hopefully get a little World Cup
preview. Yeah, sorry that we've only got the 40 minutes. But that was a great chat. But we'll carry on, Paul. Definitely, nice one. I really appreciate it. I keep thinking I have to say bye before it cuts off. It's going to cut off any second. So
you're
thanks
the anchor
again.
Man. You're the anchor man, Dave. So you do the parting.
All right. Well, thanks, Paul, and I'm looking forward to part 2.
Yeah, very soon. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Dave.
Cheers, Paul. I'll speak to you very soon then.